Most of the time, an election is, well, it's just about local stuff, right? Potholes, schools, that kind of thing. But every now and then, an election becomes something way bigger. It turns into a frontline and a global tug of war. And that is exactly what just went down in Moldova. So let's get right into it.
So why should you care? I mean, really, why is an election in this pretty small nation such a massive deal for all of Europe? What's the connection to Russia, and more importantly, to the war in Ukraine? Well, as you're about to see, the stakes are unbelievably high. All right, so let's jump straight to the headline news, the big outcome, because this wasn't just any election win. Nope. This was a huge geopolitical moment, and the shockwaves are already being felt in Moscow and Brussels. Okay, so here's what happened. The results came in, and the pro-EU party, they just scraped by, securing another majority in parliament. And look, this is a huge deal. It's a massive win for everyone in Moldova who sees their future with Europe. But just as importantly, it's a major, major setback for a huge interference campaign that was being run straight out of Moscow. But this win was anything but easy. To really get what's at stake here, you have to understand the campaign that led up to it. And let me tell you, it was messy. Super controversial from the get-go. So you basically had two camps going head-to-head. In one corner, you've got this group of pro-Moscow parties, the so-called Patriotic Bloc. And they were crying foul before a single vote was even counted, claiming it was all unfair and calling for protests. Then, in the other corner, you have the Moldovan government, and they went pretty extreme. They actually banned several parties, claiming they were getting cash from a fugitive billionaire who's, you guessed it, hiding out in Moscow. The government said there was just a massive amount of Russian interference trying to swing the vote. Okay, so this is the key question, right? Why did Russia care so much? What was in it for them if they could flip this election? And now that they've failed, what exactly have they lost? Well, Russia's game plan was pretty straightforward. First off, just stopping Moldova's journey to the EU would have been a huge propaganda win. Then there's this breakaway region, Transnistria, which is already pro-Russian. They absolutely wanted to leverage that. But the biggest prize? Just look at a map. Moldova sits right next to the critical Ukrainian port city of Odessa. If Russia could get a friendly government in Moldova, well, that creates a gigantic problem for Ukraine right on its western flank. But here's the thing. Russia wasn't the only big player in this game. The EU was watching all of this unfold, and they knew exactly what was at stake. And for once, they decided to stop just watching and actually play hardball. So what did the EU do? Well, they didn't just issue a strongly worded statement. No, they got proactive. They started pumping financial aid into the country so voters could see real, tangible benefits of looking west. They also got in the weeds, actively helping the Moldovan government check all the very difficult boxes you need to check to join the EU. And the whole time, the big picture goal was clear: secure Ukraine's flank. They knew a pro-Russian government just an hour's drive from Odessa would be an absolute disaster. And this quote from an analyst really just hits the nail on the head. This was a rare moment where the EU wasn't just acting like a referee, just keeping guard. They were playing the geopolitical game. They understood it wasn't just about the rules. It was about actively helping Moldova succeed because the strategic stakes were so high. So, okay, the pro-EU side won. Big sigh of relief in Brussels, right? Well, not so fast. This story is a long way from being over. Winning this one bottle is crucial, for sure. But the bigger tug of war continues. And the road ahead for Moldova, it's going to be tough. Look, getting into the EU is a marathon, not a sprint. It is incredibly difficult. But there's a lot of hope here. The Moldovan government is being called a star pupil because they're just so dedicated to making all the tough reforms. In fact, they're pretty confident they can get through all the hoops in the next 3 years or so. It's a tough path, but a hopeful one. Which really brings us back to the central question, the one that hangs over everything. This election was a huge win for the West, no doubt. But you can be sure that Russia is not just going to pack up and go home. So will all this support from the EU, combined with Moldova's own hard work, be enough to finally win this geopolitical tug-of-war for good? That is the billion-dollar question.